Hello, 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 and welcome back to another edition of Fan Talk, your favorite podcast by your favorite fan. That is, of course, me, Kyle Brenchley, in the house on this Wednesday. Look at that beautiful sign. Look at that beautiful candle. Rogue One is still not up yet, but holy cow, Andor Season 2. I just finished it, I guess, last week after this episode had already aired, the last episode. And I know I'm late to the party, but holy cow. Andor is by far the best Star Wars show that Disney Plus has put out. By far. Season 2 is absolutely incredible. How they ended it, how they tied up the story, how the story leads just right into Rogue One. If you haven't seen it yet, go check it out. If you're not a big Star Wars fan, that's okay. You don't need to be, because this is a show that speaks to everyone. Season 2, Episode 10, Make It Stop. Oh, chef's kiss. Incredible. Absolutely incredible. Best Star Wars piece I've seen in a very long time. So that's what I've been doing. I've obviously been watching the NBA playoffs, NHL playoffs, watching some baseball. We're getting into summer. Memorial Day is behind us, so now I guess we're officially in summer now. Holy cow, here we go. Buckle up. It's 85 degrees right now where I am. And it's probably hotter where you are, honestly. Summer's great. I struggle with the warm weather. I just always run hot, but it's okay. It's okay. Summer's a great time, and we're going to have a great time here today on the podcast, Fan Talks podcast. You can find anywhere you get your podcast. I'm everywhere. I also upload on YouTube and Spotify if you like the video versions. And we just talk sports here. If this is your first time here, welcome. Like, subscribe, share with a friend, whatever you want to do. We are talking NBA today. But we're talking about why this team is doing so well. A few weeks ago, I talked about how tanking, and I've talked about this a lot, how tanking in the NBA doesn't always work out. It's not a sure bet. It's not even worth it, in my opinion. And so let's look at a team who perhaps did it a different way, because a lot of people are like, oh, the only way you get better if you're a small market team or if you're a team that's struggling is you tank. You trade away what players you have for picks, and then 5-6 seasons down the road, those picks hopefully become something and you rebuild. That's the traditional way of doing it. But let's look at the Oklahoma City Thunder and what they did to become a great team. Because if you look at a lot of teams in the NBA, a lot of the teams in the NBA do this. I'd say a third of the teams in the NBA are in true tank mode, which means they're trying to rebuild their roster. They're trying to draft younger guys. They're trying to trade away their veteran players to try to get future draft picks. So I'd say about a third of the league is doing this at any given point in time, but it doesn't always pan out. You look at teams that are constantly stuck in this cycle. They just can't get out, and they're just bad year after year. You look at the Charlotte Hornets, bad year after year. You look at the Washington Wizards, bad year after year. You look at, the Detroit Pistons have finally gotten out of that, but they were bad for years and years and years. They finally found a way to get out of that. But what's the difference between doing that and doing what Oklahoma City Thunder did? Because they did something a little bit different. Now, if you remember about 8 years ago, 7-8 years ago, the Oklahoma City Thunder were a very different team. They had moved on from Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant had gone to the Golden State Warriors, but they still had Russell Westbrook. They still had some of those kind of fill-in pieces coming off the bench and backup pieces, and just like some mid guys that aren't really stars. But they went and they brought in Paul George. Paul George obviously was a superstar in Indiana. He comes over to Oklahoma City. They pair him with Russell Westbrook. They bring in Carmelo Anthony as a veteran presence. They have this big three-headed monster in Russell Westbrook, Paul George, and Carmelo Anthony. Now, Carmelo Anthony, amazing player. He was at the end of his career, so he was older. I think he was like 37 at the time or something, 37 or 38. So he was pretty old. He was past his prime. Russell Westbrook, this was actually kind of his prime. So Russell Westbrook's your big star. Paul George at this point was starting to become washed. And what washed means, just not as good as they once were. I think once he came to Oklahoma City, he realized, man, I'm not the same player that I used to be. So you have a team that has supposedly 3 superstars. One of them's like really old, past his prime. One of them's washed, and one of them's Russell Westbrook. And this was the Russell Westbrook. Holy cow, that's so hard to say. This is the Russell Westbrook that would be averaging a triple-double every single night. So that ultimately is not good for teams, as you saw. So what did the Oklahoma City Thunder do? They traded Paul George to the LA Clippers. Now, a little backstory here. Kawhi Leonard, amazing player, signed a 1-year deal with the Toronto Raptors. They went and won the NBA championship. He was a free agent. He left Toronto and went to Los Angeles. And he said, I'm only going to go to the Clippers if there's another big star that comes with me because I want to keep winning. He's like, I wanted to go to the Lakers because he's like, if I go to the Lakers, I know I'm going to win. But he's like, if I go to the Clippers, I want you to bring in Paul George. He personally requested Paul George, Kawhi Leonard did. So Paul George, to get him to LA, the Clippers had to throw everything they had, all their assets. And the Clippers were coming off a couple low years. I mean, they did have the Chris Paul and the Blake Griffin era a few years before, but that was kind of coming to an end. Chris Paul was moving on to the Houston Rockets, and Blake Griffin went on to, I think he was in Detroit at the time. So the Clippers had kind of tore everything down, and they were trying to rebuild. So they threw all these picks, all these assets that they had gathered from past trades and past stuff. They threw all these things at Oklahoma City to get Paul George to make Kawhi Leonard happy. And this is what the trade was. So the Clippers, they got Paul George. The Thunder got Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, your 2024 to 2025 NBA MVP. Danilo Gallinari, solid role player. They got Trey Mann. They got Jalen Williams, who's on the team right now. Baller. They got a first-round pick, 2 first-round picks, 3 first-round picks, 4 first-round picks, 5 first-round picks. So they got a first-round pick in 23, 24, 25, 26. 2 in 25 and 2 in 26. So ultimately, the Thunder got a million things. They got Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who is now their superstar. They got a role player that they ultimately used for a little bit and then traded him away. They had Trey Mann. Trey Mann was on the team for a little bit. Jalen Williams, and then all these other first-round picks. So I guess the point I'm trying to make here is what the Thunder did was they traded away what at the time the league perceived as a superstar. The league thought Paul George was big time. Kawhi Leonard thought Paul George was big time. And he was, but he wasn't quite himself. And I think, obviously, hindsight's 2020. We look back and see. But I wonder if there were people out there, perhaps maybe even Oklahoma City, who saw, man, Paul George, he's really good, but he's not quite what he used to be. He's not quite what we want. He's not quite what the league wants in a superstar anymore. And so perhaps the way to go about rebuilding is not to tank, but is to go after a guy who is perceived to be a star player and who is actually very good and can handle his own. I'm not trying to say Paul George is not a good player, because he is, but he was not that guy. He's definitely not that guy now, but he was not that guy that he was in Indiana. And when he came to Oklahoma City and they saw that, I don't know, he's not the future. They moved on from him. So what do you do now? It's 2025. Obviously, tanking does not work because you have the draft lottery. The freaking Dallas Mavericks won the draft lottery with a 1.3% chance. And you're telling me tanking's working for you? No, Jazz got screwed. So perhaps instead of just trying to be bad year after year, win 17 games, the fans hate it, the organization hates it, the players hate it. Nobody wants this. Nobody wants this. Perhaps instead you go out and get a guy who is a star. Maybe he's a little bit older. Maybe he was a star with his previous team, but then he went to a team and then maybe he took a step back. And maybe he's looking to get a new team and a new scenery and try to rebuild his career. Go get that guy. A guy that the league still thinks is a superstar. And then maybe you have him 1 year, maybe you have him 2 years, and then you trade him. The league still thinking he's a superstar. Remember Paul George, he's on the Thunder for 2 years. League still thinks he's a superstar. Kawhi Leonard thinks he's a superstar. The Clippers want Paul George. They throw everything they have to the Thunder to get Paul George. And you trade that guy, and in return, you get a buttload of picks, a buttload of players. You get a whole haul. And within that haul, you build your team with those assets. Now, you're probably saying, Kyle, didn't the Utah Jazz do this? In a way, they did. Because they had Donovan Mitchell, who was a star. They have Rudy Gobert, who was a star. And they traded them away and got a buttload of picks. And honestly, those picks haven't necessarily played out. I mean, there's still some that have yet to play out. You know, we're in 2025. There's still a 2025, 2026, perhaps even a 2027. But so there's still future value in this trade. But not all those picks hit. So I guess what I've learned, and let me know down in the comments below what you guys think, there's not one singular right answer, but there is best practices. And let me tell you right now, tanking, trying to lose on purpose is not a best practice. Here's what you should do instead. So I just explained to you what Oklahoma City Thunder did. This is what you do. Go get a guy who's a star. Go get a guy who the league values as a star. Maybe, honestly, maybe he doesn't even fit into your offensive scheme. Maybe I'm not going to say toxic because that's extreme and I don't use that word lightly. But maybe he's just not a good fit for your team. You bring him in anyways. You bring him in. He plays 1 year, maybe 2 years. The league still views him as a star. He has value. You trade him away. You get those picks, all while you're trying to win. You don't do this while you're trying to lose, because then then everyone gets frustrated. The guy doesn't want to be there. Your role players don't want to be there. Your young rookies don't want to be there. You have to win. So play like you're trying to win. Be the Atlanta Hawks. They always try to win. They try their best to win, and sometimes they get into the play-in and sometimes they don't. And then they were rewarded with the first overall pick a couple years ago. So always play to win. Get a star. Trade him. It doesn't even have to be a superstar, because obviously the price tag for them are really high. But go get a guy like James Harden. He obviously was a superstar in the past. He's taken a step back. He's still a very good player. The league still views him as a good player. But honestly, his best days are behind him. He's not going to get any better. He's only going to get worse. So you go out and get a guy like James Harden. You bring him in. You go out and get a guy like, obviously, the Oklahoma City Thunder used the Paul George. I think Paul George has expired there, unfortunately. But you go out and get a guy like James Harden. You bring him in. 1 year, 2 years, you trade him away, you get a bunch of picks. And then you just have to hit on the picks, which is easier said than done. Hindsight's always 20/20, but at least you have the picks. At least your team's trying to win. So if they do win and get into the postseason, there's still a chance they could win, or they still get into the play-in. There's still a chance they get the draft lottery. But don't just try to lose. And perhaps this is more so for small market teams. Teams like, I don't know, the New Orleans Pelicans, the Charlotte Hornets, the Memphis Grizzlies, the Utah Jazz, Portland Trail Blazers. Small market teams that have been dubbed small market teams. I think Ryan Smith will disagree with Utah being a small market team, who it's frankly an uphill battle. The league's going to find ways, and I'm not saying there's conspiracy theory, but I'm just saying the natural flow of things, and I'm not just saying NBA, but in all leagues, teams like the Celtics, teams like the Lakers, they're going to find ways. The teams like the Knicks, they're going to find ways to be good. They're going to find ways to make those teams good. NFL, they're going to find ways for the Kansas City Chiefs, the Dallas Cowboys, MLB, the New York Yankees, the Los Angeles Dodgers. The natural flow of things, good teams are going to remain good, and bad teams are going to remain bad unless something happens, right? So there's a lesson in economics too, but we're not talking that. We're talking sports. So that's what the Oklahoma City Thunder did. Let me know down below. Do you think teams can pull off this approach? Can they do it? Go get a washed up star who still has value in the league. Use him for a couple years, trade him away, get as many draft picks as possible, all while trying to win. I don't know. Let me know down below. We'll see how this works out. Obviously, it's worked out for the Oklahoma City Thunder, but can other teams pull it off? Or is this just another lucky hit that gets teams to where they are? Speaking of NBA, the Timberwolves and the Thunder, Game 5 is tonight. Thunder at home to close out the Timberwolves. I think the Thunder will do it. If they don't win tonight, they'll win Game 6. The Thunder are going to the NBA Finals. I think it's going to be Thunder Pacers. It's going to be fun regardless. But Shai Gilgeous-Alexander coming off his MVP caliber year, leading their team tonight against the Timberwolves. Can Anthony Edwards say anything about it? We will find out. And then, of course, on Thursday, Pacers and Knicks going back to Madison Square Garden. I do think the Knicks win that one. But ultimately, the Pacers just have to win one more game, and the Knicks have to win 3. Even if the Knicks somehow win 2 and force a Game 7, I think the Pacers are going to the NBA Finals. Pacers, Thunder, let me know if you predicted that down below. I definitely did not at the beginning of the season. But guys, thank you so much for tuning in to this special edition of Fan Talk. As always, you can find this podcast anywhere you get your podcast. If you're new here, thank you for listening. Please like, subscribe. It really helps out the podcast. And I'll see you guys next week for another edition of Fan Talk.